is Keiko. I'm happy to host a watercolor and mixed media paint session today. I don't have the original here, but I do have the calendar version of the bird we're painting today. So this is an Elepaio bird. It's a little native Hawaiian monarch flycatcher. And there are three different kinds or three different species here on the Hawaiian Islands. We have one here on Hawaii Island, and there's one on Kauai and one on Oahu. This one here and the one that we're painting today is the Hawaii Elepaio. I know it's sometimes a bit confusing that one of the islands of Hawaii is also called Hawaii, so it's also known as the Big Island. Anyways, this is bird number 4 in this month's Aloha 26 February Art Challenge. So this month we've been painting native Hawaiian birds, and this is the last one in the series. And I'm going to turn the camera around and talk about the supplies we're going to use today. All right, so you know the drill. Oh, the phone holder is giving me trouble today. Here we go. Okay. Turning that phone holder around a little bit. Somehow this is extra tricky today. Sorry about the time that this takes here. Let me just plug this in, and then the angle is kind of weird. Oh, here we go. Okay, and then I'm gonna set up my iPad as well so I can have a look at the chat. And as always, please let me know if the sound is okay, if you can see all right. I can always zoom in, zoom out, depending on what you guys need. Okay, hi Sylvie. Hello Suze. Moin Ulrike. Hi Lisa. Hi Nina. Moni. Sina. Hi Sina. Yeah, I don't think I've seen your name here before. Welcome, welcome. And my mom is there. All right. Yeah, let's get started. So I sent you a template with yesterday's and today's newsletter with a little drawing of the Elepaio bird. And I'm going to explain about these lines in a moment. We will not be painting this whole picture. We'll focus on the bird itself, and then we can add a few leaves and branches around, you know, depending on how much time we have. I'm gonna put this to the side for now. Look at these cute ones. This was a gift from the Hawaii Bird Society, the Audubon Society. Look how cute this bird is. It's like a pom-pom. So adorable. And they are very well known for this posture where the tail stands up high. I have not, unfortunately, I have not seen an Elepaio bird out in the wilderness yet, but I hope to get to see one someday. Okay, as for the colors, I'm going to use my own handmade Aloha watercolors today. And of course, I have to use the color that is called Elepaio. It's a pink travertine pigment, travertine as in, for example, the tiles you might have in the bathroom. And it also has a little bit of white mixed in it. So it's almost like a gouache paint. The next one here is another Hawaiian bird, Omao. It's a little thrush, also a small bird. And this is a gray ochre mixed in, and I have mixed in a few other pigments to give it a purple and blue undertone. Here we have Sanctuary. It's green earth mixed with cobalt green. This is Mele manu. It means Mele is song and manu is bird in Hawaiian, so bird song. And this is a phthalo blue. And we have Koa, Urkulano red. Koa is the name of a native Hawaiian tree. These four colors, not the koa, but these four colors are in the Mele Manu set, by the way, the birdsong set, which I will be restocking on the upcoming Sunday, so March 1st at Alohawatercolors.com. This set consists out of 8 paints and will be back on Sunday, alongside 3 other sets and about 20 single paints that I will be restocking. But I'll send out a newsletter about this at the end of the week. Okay, and then I have a pencil, mechanical pencil today. I have a kneadable eraser. I'm not sure what this is. Oh yeah, right. I wanted to show you a few tricks about how to sketch a bird, a few basics. That's what I'm going to use this one for, so you can see better. I'm going to be using 2 brushes today. One is my own Aloha Watercolors size 8 travel brush. And then this one is a size 4 round brush by the German company KUM, K-U-M. And then I have a assortment of watercolor pencils or water-soluble pencils in different shades of brown and green. This one is a charcoal gray. And I also have a yellow, just in case we're gonna draw a few flowers. I'm gonna link all the materials that I use down below in the comments, not in the comments, in the description box for you later after the session, so you can always come back and see what I use during the session. As for paper, hold on. Oh, and over in the chat, Sylvie says, reminds me of our German Zaunkönig. Yeah, true. It is. I'm not sure what a Zaunkönig is in English, but it's also a small bird that lifts up the tail. And that's a... Did anybody look up what the Zaunkönig is in English? A wren? Is that it? Oh, so indeed they even belong to the same family. How interesting. Thanks, you guys. I love these little tidbits of knowledge. Lisa says, still hoping for more sizes on those travel brushes, just saying. Yes, me too, me too. I am working closely with that wonderful German small company in Germany who makes these travel brushes by hand. And we're already talking about more sizes. Yes, yes, yes. But you know, you guys, I have to be in Germany for that. So I mean, I don't have to be, but it's much better, believe me, if I'm there. And I won't be going back to Germany before the fall. So the fall season, autumn season, October, November. So you gotta wait a little bit. Okay, today I'm going to be using my Strathmore 500 sketchbook. Let me zoom out a little bit. This is the sketchbook that I have been using for the challenge so far. So it has cotton paper and a soft cover. As you can see, I have not managed to finish my Pueo owl yet from last week, but that's okay. one of the reasons is that I actually did the challenge also in my Royal Talents Art Creations sketchbook. And I did do my Pueo Owl in here, but that was just colored pencils, so just dry media. You know, guys, sometimes when it's late and I really want to create, but it's late at night, I do not want to pull out my watercolors or any other wet media. I just want to sit down and draw real quick. Then it's usually just brush pens, like here, and colored pencils. So again, I'm going to link everything, all the materials down below in the description box for you to check out later. Let me just rearrange a few things here so we have more space to see better. So first off, I want to start with a sketch. And it doesn't matter if you have already traced your drawing, your template or not. It's always good to learn a few things, right? About sketching. Okay, let me grab a colored pencil in a good color. I think my husband must have used that one because mine are always sharpened. I love sharpening colored pencils. It's one of my favorite things to do. And you know, it's always like, oh, this needs sharpening. Let me get to it. So whenever I have one that's not sharp, I know it's, Mr. Coffee. So for this particular bird, I already pointed out that the tail is, you know, the bird likes to put the tail up high, and you can clearly see this angle here between the body, the head, and the tail. So this is your first hint or your first tip. Whenever you look at a bird photo, bird reference, bird in real life, try to see what angles you can see, what angle you can put the bird in. And this would be the first one, the line between the head, body, and the tail. Up next, I then like to work with circles. So the head is one circle or oval. The body is a bigger oval. And I do realize that this is easier because I already have my drawing. Naturally, if you have to build your bird from scratch, it's going to be a bit more tricky. But I wanted to explain to you why I had these lines in the template. So looking at the bird, another approach would be, yes, first look at this line here, this angle, and then you can also tell that there is another angle or line or geometrical shape you could put this bird in. See it like this? So this is usually how I approach drawing birds. I look at my reference and then I try to see the lines and the geometrical shapes I can break that bird into. And the simpler, the better. So let's translate that into an actual drawing. And let's have a sip of tea. Okay, so I'm going to move things around real quick again. Paints here. So, and I will be using a pencil just to draw in the lines here. So this is our angle, head, body, and the tail. And over here, I'm going to draw in my oval for the head, another oval for the body, and don't worry if you don't get that exactly right from the start. You are probably sketching in pencil, then you can still change it. So we have the shape of the head, and then there's a little, how do you say that? So it's it's like almost like a little kink between the head and the back, or maybe I should say angle, another angle, and then we go to the tail and back to the head, the front of the head, and the beak. With a lot of birds, there's also one more tip I can give you, and that's that the beak and the eye are usually on one line. So when you draw a bird and you feel like the position of the eye and the beak are kind of strange, then just make sure that you have that line connecting the beak and the eye. We continue the head down here. Then there's a nice rounded belly in front. Put in the wing and finish the tail. So my bird got a bit long, like the body length is a bit long. So in my final drawing, in my sketchbook, I'm going to make sure that the bird is not that long. It's actually a bit shorter. So the body probably ends more like here. And then the tail, I'm gonna cut off here. As for the legs are usually, so if you look at the center of the body, the center line would be here, dividing the bird into part 1, part 2. Then you'd have to put one leg to one side, and then the other approximately in the same distance. This is another thing for birds, that you always want to look at the center of the bird and then place the legs so that it makes sense the bird is balanced. And I shouldn't have drawn that line like this. I think I should have drawn more like that, perpendicular to the ground. But birds can be upside down, you know that. They can be in the craziest positions. And then we have the little feet here. And then this one is kind of tucked under, you know, the bird is sitting on the leg almost. So it would, you know, if you drew it all the way, this leg would go to the back and then into the body like that. But you only see the front part of the leg. Okay, so to recap, when you look at a reference of a bird, and let's just say this would be a reference photo, not a reference drawing, make sure you start by checking out the angle between the head and the tail. You know, some birds have the tail down, and then you'd have more of a straight line. Hi. Hello. Sorry, Chihuahua trouble. I'm currently watching my neighbor's dogs, and there are 2 4-month-old puppies involved in that caboodle, so it's a lot going on. Okay, number 1, angle here at the head, and then work with circles and ovals to define the body shape. There's always a line connecting the beak and the eye, so make sure you find that out on the photo. And then there's also kind of like a center line, or a center of body, you could say, where the legs have to make sense to keep that body in an angle that looks realistic. So in this case here, for example, you would start with, you know, this angle here, and then you have the tip of the beak and the eye connecting like that, and the center of the body here in order to place the legs. So it would look really weird if you put the legs here in the front. You know, I'm contemplating, you know what, I'm gonna just go for 1 minute and grab a painting I did like 8 years ago, so where I totally did not know about that. Hold on 1 minute. Okay, so maybe not 8 years ago, I think it was like 6 years ago. And actually, you know, it's funny, I put it in a frame and I hung it up because I still love it. This is the Omao bird, and I hope you can see that. Let me see. So the legs on this one are so far in the back. It's actually like it would tip over to the front or tip forward at any point. So the legs should be, one of the legs at least should be here holding the balancing the bird better. So this is really like, pew, it's gonna fall forward. Okay, I hope that makes it a bit clearer what I meant with, you know, distributing the legs in a way that makes sense. And over in the chat, Patricia says, my French bulldog is responding to your dog. Oh, that's funny. I don't think it's actually that loud. They can be much louder, let me tell you. Okay, let's move on to my other sketchbook. And before we do, let me just point out one person that is extremely good in explaining how to draw birds, and I actually got that tip from my friend Tracy. So this guy's name is John. I'm not sure how this is pronounced. Muir Laws. And he has a book on nature journaling and also a book on how to draw birds. He also has a few tutorials up on YouTube. So most of my bird drawing tips that I learned later, in the sense that after, you know, I drew so many birds and I looked into actually learning more about it, not just learning by doing, but learning from other people who are already really good. I learned a lot from this guy. Okay, and I'm just reading about the sunshine reaching Bavaria. That's so lovely. I'm so glad for you guys. All I ever hear, or all I've heard in the last weeks and months, was just about snowstorms and blizzards and yeah. And you know, I'm actually cold in Hawaii, but that's a totally different story, because this morning it was barely over 60 Fahrenheit. So for me, you know, in Hawaii, that's cold. I know you're laughing. I know you are. But, I mean, you saw me. I'm wearing the sweater. I'm wearing socks and a hat, and I'm still having cold feet. Okay, I'm having my pencil over here. Let's get started. Let's draw our bird again. If you have already drawn it and are now on hold, apologies, but I hope that the little drawing session gave you a bit more of an insight. Okay, so let's start with our angle. 1 and 2. It's a pretty steep angle here. And then I want to get that body length right. Remember, my bird got a bit too long, so making sure that I make my bird a bit more chubby. Okay, I'm gonna cut off the tail here. Okay, I'm gonna actually stand up and look at my drawing from above, not at an angle. Yeah, I think that's better. Drawing the wing. Leg one, and then the other leg is up here. Okay. So, okay, and let's refine the sketch. So between the back of the bird and the head, there's just a tiny slight dip, and then the top of the head looks pretty straight, and then we have a nice curve here at the front. Then the beak and the eye on the same line. Try to not make the beak too long. This bird has more of a small beak, a short one. Kind of like the opposite of what we did at in the first week of this challenge. Remember when we drew the EEV bird with a long and curved bill? Okay, here we go. Should I zoom in a little bit maybe? It seems to me that it's maybe a bit far away for you to see. Okay, hope this is better. Just let me know. Okay, let's go on and finish the head. Okay, and I'm gonna jump back up to the back, which is rather straight in this area. And then we have the steep angle for the tail. Tail feathers. I'm gonna refine this later once we get to the painting phase. This is just the initial drawing sketch. Okay, and I'm hopping back to the head and now going from the head to the belly. Make that nice and round. Okay, how's it going, you guys? Are you drawing along? If so, how is your sketch looking? Are you happy? I know that some of you participated in the bird challenge in January. What was that called again? A Bird Fest. That's right. So lots of birds recently. You might have gotten that practice all in and are now pros in drawing birds. Okay, and then this one here is kind of like hidden under the wing, this little leg. Okay, last but not least, I think the wing is a bit up higher here. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with this. And let's put the bird on a branch, pretty close to the body. So for this challenge, I not only have prompts or one prompt per week, I also have the so-called side quests. And one of the side quests for this month was mixed media. So using different types of art supplies, for example, watercolor and color pencil or crayons or gouache with watercolor, ink and watercolor, for example, or pastels. And another side quest was to add a native Hawaiian plant to your bird. So in this case, or I should show you my calendar. This is a, I think this was a Ho'awa tree, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at the flowers, I think it is. Even though these leaves look more like a kukui tree. So I might have just mixed two different ones here. It's been quite a while since I've painted this one, so I don't really remember. But I'd say we'll just turn this into a kukui tree. The kukui tree, also known as the candle nut tree, is the state tree in Hawaii. It's actually an indigenous tree, so it grows in other places in the world too, and that's probably the reason why a few years ago Hawaii decided to also name an endemic state tree, meaning that they chose a tree that only grows in Hawaii, and that's the Ohialehua tree. Okay, let's put in a second branch here, maybe a leaf, little branch coming out from here. So you can be very loose and open with what you add to your bird, or you can also just focus on your bird if you like. Next step, with my kneadable eraser, get that hair out of here, I'm gonna roll this one over my drawing to lighten up my pencil lines. This is a very good technique if you have maybe more of a strong hand with your sketches to lighten up the pencil lines, because as soon as you draw over them, paint over them with watercolors, then they're all set. You cannot erase pencil lines after the fact. Also going to go around and erase a few of the help lines and ovals, shapes that I drew to help myself find the shape of the bird. Okay, so for the sake of this live class, I'm not going to erase the lines much further. I would make them almost invisible. But let's get to painting. Okay, and Ulrike says her sketch is finished and let's go on painting. Yes, let's do that. So Suze is saying, I wish they sold them with a container here, just wrapped in plastic. So had to find a container to put it in. Oh, you mean these guys? Oh, okay. Yeah, I got this one in Germany. So maybe they sell it in a different way there. I mean, it is a German brand, Faber Castell. So, huh. You got this eraser just like wrapped in a piece of plastic? That's a bit lame, huh? Should give you a little container. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you don't put it in a container and just throw it in a bag, everything's gonna stick to it. So definitely need a container, yes. Just let me grab a mixing palette. Forgot to mention that. Here we go. So I'm going to use a ceramic mixing palette because we will be mixing a few colors, so I forgot to mention that in the beginning. Okay, let me do a few swatches. So especially if you do not have the colors that I'm using today, if you want to look for some similar colors in your watercolor set, these swatches hopefully are helpful. So this is like my peachy orange, and then I have the Ercolano red. This is the gray ochre mixed with some purple and blue. It really is only a hint to make it a cool gray. Then I have my phthalo blue, very bright, and green earth with cobalt green. I'm also using two water containers, one to rinse my brush in initially here on the right hand side, and then I have the left one with clean water that hopefully stays clean. So I always try and use two containers to keep one container pretty clean. Okay, let's start with the base layer. So I'm using my peachy color here, Elepaio, mixing it in my ceramic palette with a little bit more water. And now, with the exception of the eye, the beak, and some parts here in the back that stay white, I'm going to layer the whole bird with a very diluted peach color. Okay, I'm also gonna leave out a few white parts here in the wing. So with watercolor, you always have to think about which parts of my paintings will remain white. And the white will be the white of the paper. By the way, there are also a lot of artists who will paint the whole page with a base color first to kind of give it a more homogeneous feel and to not work with the stark white of the paper. So I do that too a lot, but more for landscapes. I'm gonna continue and put that peachy color onto my branch as well, because that's gonna be brown later on. I will refrain from putting the peach color into my leaves because I want them to be nice and green, and if I mix this green with the peachy color, it'll still be green, but it will more turn like a brownish mossy green, and I want to avoid that. Okay, so next step, while the paint is still wet, I'm grabbing my reddish brown color, Ercolano red. And if you don't have that color at home, you can easily mix it with, you know, any kind of brown and some red. And I'm gonna drop in, dab my paper here at the bottom. So we're already introducing the second color and also doing some shading. And I'll move on to my branch. Also still wet, paper still damp. And here and there, add a bit of this reddish brown color. I'm rinsing my brush, picking up some of the gray. Okay, my mom is saying that in Munich the sun was so wonderful, sunny today, beautifully warm. We reached 20 degrees on Sunday. So that's Celsius, yeah, you guys, not Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit would be very cold. So 20 Celsius, that's really nice. That's like in the higher 70s Fahrenheit. Wow, so you guys went from super winter to spring in no time. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, I will be mixing this gray into my reddish brown to create a darker brown tone. Rinsing my brush again to pick up some more of this brown, reddish brown color. If you mix like this, you can also use two different brushes, have brown on one brush and the gray on the other one, so you don't have to go back and forth and rinse your brush every single time you add some more color. Yeah, this is a nice shade of brown. Okay. I'm dabbing my bird here on the belly, adding more shade, more color. And now it really depends on how wet the wing and the tail still are. So I kind of want to make sure it's not too wet. If you work with really heavy cotton paper, you might have to wait a little until you darken these parts of the bird here. One of the reasons I'm so loose with my bird is because I know that later on I'm going to go over everything with colored pencil. So I'm not too worried about getting every single stroke like in place perfectly. And with my nice brown, I'm going to go over the branch as well. Adding a few more shadows, a few more colors here. And honestly, I think this method is so freeing. It makes you not worry too much about getting all the details right from the start. You can just go in with the very loose watercolor, make it look super messy, and then clean it up later with some colored pencil. Puppy, puppy, puppy! Not sure how this stroke got in there. You see that? That's weird. Okay, let me try and lift that away. So this is a good example for how to fix a mistake. Okay, you want to clean your brush. So I rinsed it and I dabbed it on a piece of fabric. And now I'm going to try and lift this stroke that I made, and I just rinsed my brush again, so literally just one stroke to dilute that brown spot. Then I'm rinsing and washing my brush again. Okay, yeah, I think that worked more or less. There are some colors that are really difficult to lift, like phthalo blue, opera pink. You know, they just seep into the paper, and very difficult to lift again. But this one kind of worked. Okay, and Sylvia says, yes, I need spring now too. Oh, I bet you guys. I think February is always a difficult month because it's just been winter for like half a year, right? Let's move on to green while this whole mess is still drying, I want to start with the leafy parts of my painting. So this is a mix of green earth and cobalt green, but honestly it does not matter what green you use. Just use any type of green you have. Hi puppies. Hello. Hey, hey, don't eat, no, don't eat that. Nene. She eats everything. You eat everything. Hmm? Maybe I should feed them more. Let's make a very diluted version of this green. And, oops. Well, I'm very loose today. Look at that. Look at this mess, you guys. Yeah. Right, Kale. It's a mess. So if this happens to you, then don't fret. Rinse your brush, dab it on a paper towel or whatever you have at hand to dry your brush, and then just lift it off of your bird so you don't have a green bird. Maybe this one too. Okay. All right, let's continue with our greens. Now for a little bit of a different shade of green, you can mix in some of that peachy color. If you have yellow, then of course you're very welcome to use yellow to mix with your green for some more mossy shades. But I want to kind of stay within my 5 colors that I'm using today. I'm just mixed in some of this brown. Okay, and adding that to my leaves very haphazardly. So, okay. Here as well, defining the stems, the branches a bit more. Feel free to drop in some of this green mix into your branches as well. Oh, by the way, this sketchbook here that I'm using, the Strathmore 500, is 100% cotton paper, so very fancy. That also means that the paper usually stays wet a bit longer. And I usually don't, for illustrations like this, I prefer to use non-cotton paper for the live streams, just because it dries faster. However, this paper is quite thin, and it's actually a really good combo. Cotton paper, but quite thin. Makes it dry relatively fast, but you still have a lot of options to work with the paper, to manipulate it, to manipulate the paint. Okay, I'm blending my different browns and greens here on the branch. And again, depending on the paints and the paper you use, this might be easier or trickier to do. So if this part of blending colors doesn't work well for you, then you can maybe try the same technique on a different paper and see different results. Just blame it on the paper. Okay, we have completed the first phase of the ugly phase. It's always an ugly phase in watercolor, at least one. Okay, let me put my paints down here. I'm gonna bring back this print of my Elepaio that was in the calendar, or that is in the calendar. It's actually this year's calendar. Okay, because I do use it a little bit as a reference, even though we're changing up the colors a bit today. Okay, so my bird is still drying, which means I'm going to work a little more on the foliage while the bird still dries. I'm mixing more of that light green. It's nice, almost like a sage green. And adding a few more leaves, branches. Okay, oh, no, he can't sit on my lap now. My dog is right here. Yeah, he wants to be a lap dog. Okay, I'd say let's add some more shadows while the bird is still drying. So with my gray color, sorry that's off screen, put it here. Okay, gray onto the palette. You might even want to use a darker color like Payne's Gray or black or dark indigo for this part. And then mixing in a tiny bit of my reddish brown. And rinsing my brush, picking up some more gray color. Okay. And adding some more shadow here. For this painting, the light is coming from the top left, which means that we'll have shadows on everything on the right hand side. So the belly of the bird, the bottom right side of the branches, and of course we can also emphasize this later with the colored pencils. Okay, let me check on the dryness of the bird. Yeah, looks still damp. Let's see. I'm gonna just try and go in there real careful. See how that paint behaves. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so with the same mix, brown and gray, I'm going into my bird, and probably it will be a good idea to change brushes now for the details. Okay, so I just switched to my size 4 round brush. You can use a smaller one too, if you like. And make sure you don't drag your hand through the foliage here that's still wet. I actually found out something really neat. I'm resting my arm on the top of my tin, my paint tin. And it's not only super comfortable, but it also allows me to just not have my hand touch the paper and rest comfortably on this tin. Wow, I just only did it because I don't have enough space here on the table to put everything. Turns out this is super nice. It's like a happy accident. Okay, I'm going over the dark parts of my bird here, defining some of the feathers in the tail. So this is a bit of a mix of drawing outlines as well as darkening the already dark spots. Gonna mix a bit more of my gray and brown. Add a bit more gray. Okay, let's go over to the wing. You have, of course, noticed that, hi Nene, hi, oh, it's Kea, hi Kea, that today's painting is not the same as over here, the Kea, is not the same as the template I've sent around. So it's usually because I tend to use different reference photos. So for this particular bird, I used 2 or 3 different reference photos. So one for the overall shape and then one for the position of the wing. And I looked at a few different ones for the position of the legs as well. And that's why you might see a difference here. Loosely drawing in the legs. So the Elepaio have dark legs. And another tip is to stay kind of skinny with the legs. Even though this is too skinny, it's very easy to get too thick with the legs. So again, you can just go in back later with colored pencil and reshape and define the legs. But always start out a bit skinnier than you think you need, because it's gonna just get thicker automatically. Just like in real life, legs always getting thicker, eh? I watered down my dark brown with some water here. See, it's very watery. I'm gonna zoom back in. There we go. And now I'm going to add a little bit of color here. And I could leave it like this, but I do want to add a little bit more blending. So I'm adding some of my peachy color, Elepaio. And I'm going to go back in and mix this in with the brown. I think, you know, when I look at this print here, I think what I did is I used yellow ochre for this part. So yellow ochre paint to create this exact, like, vibrant yellow. But that's okay. All the Elepaio look a bit different. So even though it's the same species, depending on which island you are and you see an Elepaio, they have differences in color, especially. So this might just be a Kauai Elepaio maybe. So is Tracy in the chat today? I haven't seen her yet. Arctic Tern. don't think she's there, huh? She's my bird nerd friend, and she's actually seen, I think at this point, pretty much all native Hawaiian birds on her bird excursions. So I was just curious to know if she's seen all the 3 different types of Elepaio yet. You know, they say that these birds are actually very curious and inquisitive, and they will even follow hikers around, which, believe me, is very unusual for, I think, for any bird. I've heard there are some in New Zealand that are also very curious, and we do have some non-native birds here that are not shy at all. The myna birds, I think in Germany they're called beo. But yeah, for a native Hawaiian bird, I think it's kind of rare that they would be that curious and follow you around. I am waiting for that day, going on a hike and then being followed around by this little cute Elepaio bird would be such a delight. So with my dark gray and brown mix, it's mostly gray at this point. I'm holding my brush really loosely, and I'm just gonna go over these dark spots here at the bottom side with some very loose strokes. So basically the whole concept of working loosely like this is to define the contrasts. So you look for the darker spots in the bird and the foliage and the lighter spots, and you just continuously add layer over layer in the darker spots, in the darker parts. And then at some point, you can switch to color pencils and give everything more texture and detail. I usually go to that point very early on. So this would actually, for me, usually already be the stage where I go over to colored pencil to add details, etc. And then maybe I add some more features, some more little things with watercolor. Okay, let's draw in the beak. I'm using my gray color, size 4 round brush. I start with the bottom line. And if you have shaky hands today, don't worry, you can do this part really easily. Hey, hey, hey. Leo. Shush. It's okay. It's just the neighbor shouting. Don't mind the neighbor dogs. Okay, I started with the top line of the beak. You can do this in colored pencil or even fine liner if you, as I said, if you have shaky hands today, no problem. We all have that. And if you have them every day, no problem either. Then you can just always do this with the medium you feel comfortable in. No shame. If you have been with me for a while, you know that it's all about the joy of experimenting, of color. My live streams are not so much about precision, getting things done. It's really about the process, getting together. So earlier I mentioned, you know, make the legs skinny. It's also true for don't make the eye too big from the start. You can always make it bigger. You want to start with a smaller shape and then refine it later. All right, let me add a little more gray to the belly of the bird here. Isn't it interesting to see this bird come to life slowly. Like, I mean, you literally start from a big blobby mess. And now we already have some contrast, you know, dark and light. And that defines a lot of the things already, even though there aren't that many details yet. So this is a good takeaway, I think, for any kind of painting that you do, is to always try and find the light and always try to find the dark in, for example, that reference photo you're using. Where are the dark parts? Where are the light parts? And then really focusing, zooming in on that and trying to get those darks and lights in from the start. And especially because watercolor requires you to make these decisions from the start, because you need to work with the white of the paper. It's always a good idea to analyze what you want to draw in this way. Okay, you just saw me pick up the Ercolano red, and it's very intense, so I'm watering it down. Adding just a few strokes here in the belly part of the bird and also here in the neck. Okay, I'd say let's move on to colored pencils. Do you have any questions at this point? Hi, Tracy. There she is. Tracy says she's only seen the Oahu and Hawaii Island one. Well, it's already 2 out of 3. It's great. So haven't been to Kauai, see the Elepaio yet, huh? Mm-hmm. Have they followed you around? Have you seen that? Have you noticed that? Or is it more like that they come close and look at you and your big camera? So let's move on to watercolor pencils. I have, as I mentioned in the beginning, all water-soluble pencils, colored pencils. They are very soft, as opposed to the regular colored pencil, you know, such as this one here, has a much harder lead, and you could potentially damage your paper, especially when it's still wet or moist. So I really love using these water-soluble colored pencils, or watercolor pencils as they are also called. And I have a few different colors here. I might actually add this one, like a yellow ochre, and add that to my bird here, because I really like how in my print this part of the bird shows up in this yellow ochre. So I'm lightly going over the parts here in the head of the bird that are a bit yellowish. And then let's move over to the branch, add a bit of yellow here in the lighter part. So now we're adding both texture but also detail. So with the colored pencil, you can add cross-hatching, for example. You can make circles. Let me use a different color so it shows up better. Circles, cross-hatching, just little lines like this. And of course, you can also use your colored pencil to draw lines. For example, here in the leg, you know, the back part of the leg, if you want to add a shadow, you can just draw a line. And then go back to adding little tiny lines. Draw an outline. I just love this technique. I think if I had to choose, oh, wouldn't that be terrible? I would be so sad. There was just one art technique I could use for the rest of my life. But I think if I had to choose, it would be this combo, watercolor and colored pencil. Okay, Tracy says over in the chat, yes, landed in front of me, really, flew towards me. What? Super curious, smaller than I'd imagine. Sylvie says the wren here, meaning in Germany, is also very tiny, but I don't know if the wren is also curious. I think so. I mean, I remember I grew up in Germany, so for those of you who are not aware, and whenever we had these wrens, they would sit on the fence, the garden fence, and they, unlike other birds, when you approach, would fly away. Those did not necessarily fly away right away. But I have never experienced one of those wrens coming and flying towards me, like Tracy now is describing here on the Hawaiian Islands. So I switched to this walnut brown pencil and adding some texture to my branches. So you can see me going back and forth between the bird and the branch. I do not really have a particular way of adding things chronologically, so to speak. I do not just stay with the bird, finish the bird, and then go to the branch. I kind of hop around. So in a sense, you could say I choose a color and then I add the color to all the places in my painting or within my painting where I feel that that color is needed, rather than working just, for example, within the bird and then adding all the different colors. That is just my personal preference, and yours might be different. So if you feel more accomplished by finishing one part of your design first, then by all means, you should do that. And if you like to stay really loose, like very playful, then it might help if you jump around and add little textures, details to different parts of your painting. I move back to my charcoal colored pencil. I am emphasizing the shadow, the dark parts of my bird, adding some texture here in the tail feather and also an outline. So I do hope that this is not totally impossible for you guys. I know that we have a few new faces here today, and I do realize that drawing and painting birds is difficult for beginners. It's just, you really do have to get the proportions right or the bird looks really funny. But hey, you might end up really liking that wonky bird, like the one I even put in a frame, even though the legs are anatomically absolutely impossible. I still love that bird. Maybe because it was one of the first birds or Hawaiian birds, I should say, I painted back then. Okay, our little bird is gaining some contrast, some shape. I'm back with my dark brown colored pencil. And with some quick and very little strokes, adding a bit more texture here. So I'm not a big fan of painting feathers in the way that I would actually paint every single feather. First of all, you know, this is a very small scale, and the feathers in this particular instance are, of course, they are visible. You know, you could paint them in the sense that you could paint the contrast, the shadow, and the light in every single feather. But I mean, look at this part here of the body. Some areas kind of merge together. Like here, this is more like a brown patch. And then here you can see the single feathers more clearly, but in a lot of cases here, for example, in the head area, it really resembles little tiny strokes. I'm using my burnt ochre colored pencil. I'm adding a few tiny strokes to indicate those head feathers. So I think it's necessary, or it's a good idea to find a balance between adding texture and also letting the watercolor base layer shine through. And I think this for me at least is a good balance. I can tell that yes, the bird has feathers because here and there I'm hinting at them, but I also don't mind leaving some of these flatter textures of my watercolor base layer visible. I do think it's rather easy to overwork watercolor paintings, or maybe I should actually say mixed media paintings, because it's just so tempting to throw all the media at it and to go over and over and add more and more texture. So I make this conscious decision to leave some parts of the watercolor visible. And I think you'll get the hang of it with time, and also you will get to know your own preference, because we're all different, you know. You might actually really love going over everything again and again and adding more and more layers and more texture. Whereas in my picture, you know, I would deem that already overworked, but for you, it might look beautiful and just like what you wanted. Or you might be the opposite and really want to work mostly in watercolor, and then adding so much colored pencil on top is not what you like. And so in my live streams here on YouTube, I have both. I have streams that were mostly watercolor, almost exclusively, and then also some that were more mixed media, like this one today. Okay, I'm getting to the point where my paper is starting to pill a little because I'm throwing so much at it and it's still moist. So I'm just going to move over to a different part. And I'm switching between different greens and adding a few textures here and there, emphasizing the outlines, emphasizing my shadows. Okay, then let's move on to this leaf up here. I want to show you a little bit of a different technique. So I haven't drawn in any veins yet of this one. So let's say the veins of this leaf are lighter than the rest of the leaf. You can start by outlining where these veins are, actually probably more like here. And then you draw in the spaces in between. So with a little bit of negative space painting or drawing technique, you can define the veins of this leaf. Make them stand out. And I think it's a really fun way to bring a little bit of excitement to your composition. A little bit of variation. You know, one leaf you could do one way. You can, like I did down here, draw in the veins darker, like this. And then up here, make this variation that you draw in the negative space and define your leaf that way. Gonna add a little bit of brown for some color variation. You can probably tell that I can get really lost in this process in a good way. And I do love to add more and more layers. I could, you know, even get my crayons out and add some crayons or pan pastels. So there's so many possibilities. What to add. You could add little flowers here and there. Either with watercolor, you know, you could go back and add some petals with watercolor or just draw them in with your colored pencil. And again, this would be a really nice opportunity to work with some negative space, defining these flowers, for example, by painting the background around them. So naturally, you just saw me draw them, drawing them with colored pencil. But now instead of defining them or defining the insides of the petals, you know, adding line work, etc., what I'm doing here is I draw around the petals. I'm drawing in, or I'm painting in the background. And defining the shape of these flowers through adding a background. And I could do this on this side as well. And if you have been wondering why I added blue to our color palette today, it's really basically only because I wanted to add a little bit of a blue sky in the background. So this is the moment for a very watery. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys heard me in the last couple minutes because I think my phone went into power saving mode or something. I hope that was okay. I just basically talked about that now finally is the time to add some blue to our painting, because you were probably wondering why I brought this blue along today at all. And it really is only to add to the background a little bit. Okay, I should probably go and find a charging cable for my phone before that gives up on us. Man, I have a pretty old phone at this point, and it does. The battery life, yep, I gotta say, it's not the best, especially not when I'm doing videos, filming. Okay, let me unplug this right. I'm still here, I just have to plug in my phone. There we go. Alrighty. Excuse me. We have what's called VOG here on the island. It's been a year or so, I think, at this point. It just means that whenever the volcano on the other side of the island is active, and it's been active for a year, there is like volcano particles, ash particles drifting through the air, and they usually come over to our Kona side here on the west side, and then it just sits in the air like a fog or smog cloud almost. So that's why it's called VOG, volcano smog or volcano fog. And it leads to me, you know, having some, not really issues, luckily, but I can definitely tell that it feels like I have something in my throat, you know, like it's not like I'm getting sick or anything, but I do feel it a little bit, yeah. So some people are more affected by that, unfortunately. Like, you know, itchy eyes, sore throat. It's not as bad for me, thankfully, unless it's a really, you know, it is a really foggy day. Then yeah, definitely I can feel it too. But it's mostly that I feel it through just being very tired. Okay, I'm picking up some of my watercolor again, because why not? And painting around the little floral shapes here in the background. Okay, so you guys, let me know about your experience you're having with today's live stream. I know it's a bit more loose than our other streams. It's a bit more like I actually work most of the time. So I think today is a really good glimpse into the style of painting that I prefer, that I do the most of. However, it doesn't always mean that this is what I'm showing you guys in the live streams on YouTube, because of course, you know, we're trying to learn watercolor together here. So I do show you a lot of more basic techniques as well. But yeah, for me, this style is definitely the most fun and the one that I personally prefer. But it might be different for you, so I'm curious to see and hear what you think about this. Okay, so while our background is still wet, let's add some colored pencil. And please make sure that if you use regular colored pencil, that you wait till your paper is dry. Only do this if you have the watercolor pencils, the water-soluble colored pencils. These are so soft that you can just effortlessly blend them with the wet paper. And adding some over here as well. So everybody busy drawing and painting. I hope you're having fun. I hope you're enjoying this today. But yeah, whenever you have time, let me know. And that. Kea. 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 She always gets so upset about everything. Like all the dogs could be sleeping, and then the one dog that always gets upset about hearing something is the little Kea dog. And then she wakes everybody up, and then everybody's barking. So I try to, you know, get her while there's still time. Alrighty, let's see. So, are you guys curious what we're gonna do next month? Because, I mean, we are almost at the end of this month, and next month we'll have something totally different. Any guesses? No! That's not it, Kea. No. Wrong. We do have a car in the driveway, though. Who might that be? So, next month, my dears, we are going to focus on landscapes. So we're going to do different types of landscapes in Hawaii, and we're going to have some really interesting techniques. So we're going to work with wet on wet and wet on dry techniques. We're going to do mountains, palm trees, oceans, all sorts of things. So we're going to basically zoom out. I feel like when you draw animals, you know, you zoom in a lot, you focus on details, a lot of tiny shapes, and we're gonna totally zoom out and do landscapes next month. Yes, Tracy, flowers, landscapes, not flowers, that's later, landscapes for March. And I will be hosting a live stream in 1 week again, because yeah, in 1 week it's already gonna be the next month. So 1 week from today, Wednesday, what is the date? I think it's March 4th. We're gonna do mountains and palm trees, and especially focus on wet on dry and wet on wet watercolor technique. So if that's new to you, I would invite you to come to the next live stream. I also wanted to point out and say again that this Sunday on March 1st, I have a big restock in my shop, Aloha Watercolors, and it starts at 9 a.m. Hawaii time. So that's 11 a.m. on the West Coast, it's 2 p.m. on the East Coast, and it's 8 p.m. over in Germany, France, etc. I will be sending out a newsletter, as I said earlier, with all the available sets. There will be 4 sets that it will be restocked, and around 20 single paints as well. And quite a few of them I haven't had in the store for a long time, like the rainbow set, the supernova set, and single colors like aubergine and aomoe haven't been in the store for years. So definitely take a look. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's session. By no means is this done yet. I mean, I could, you know, draw and draw, add details and shadows ad infinitum to this, but it's already been over 1.5 hours, so I think we're gonna call this done for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. As always, please give me a thumbs up on this video if you had a good time, and if you could leave a comment down below, even better. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. And you can also hit the notification bell, and that will tell you whenever there's a new video out. Okay, I think I got it all right. It's always like this and this and this and this. Okay, let's put the date stamp on, February 25th. Is that right? Yes, I think so. If not, then it is what it is. Please share with me your creations. If you've painted along, you can share them over on Instagram and tag me at Alohawatercolors and the Aloha Studios. If you are not on social media, no worries about that. I actually do have a few participants who email me their paintings, so that's also totally possible. I will leave everything, all the information down below in the description box, and I'll see you again next week for another live stream. Until then, happy creating and aloha!